The crisp morning air carried a hint of approaching winter as Keanu Reeves pulled his modest sedan into the parking lot of Westridge Supermarket. Dressed in faded jeans, a well-worn black t-shirt, and a navy beanie pulled low over his brow, he looked nothing like the Hollywood star whose face had graced movie posters worldwide. His beard was slightly unkempt, and dark sunglasses shielded his eyes from recognition. To any casual observer, he appeared to be just another shopper preparing for his weekly grocery run. As he stepped out of his car, the contrast between Keanu and the surrounding scene was striking. The parking lot was dotted with luxury vehicles, gleaming SUVs and sports cars that cost more than what most people earned in a year. A group of well-dressed shoppers chatted animatedly near the entrance, their designer bags and polished appearances reflecting the affluent neighborhood surrounding Westridge. Keanu paused for a moment, observing the scene with quiet contemplation. His attention was drawn to an elderly man in the far corner of the lot, hunched over as he slowly pushed a line of shopping carts toward the store. The man's weathered hands gripped the handle with determination, though his frail frame shook with each step. His clothes were clean, but visibly worn, patches carefully sewn onto the elbows of his thin jacket, which seemed inadequate protection against the morning chill. What happened next would leave everyone completely speechless. A chance encounter. Martin Geller had been collecting shopping carts at Westridge Supermarket for nearly 3 months now. At 90 years old, the former mathematics professor never imagined he would spend his twilight years pushing carts across an asphalt parking lot. But life had delivered a series of unexpected blows. His wife's prolonged illness had depleted their savings before her passing last year, and the modest pension that once seemed sufficient now barely covered his medications and the rent for his small apartment. "Just 5 more hours," Martin whispered to himself as he lined up another row of carts. His arthritis flared with each movement, but he couldn't afford to rest. The meager hourly wage he earned was the difference between having dinner and going to bed hungry. Inside the supermarket, the atmosphere was a stark contrast to the subdued parking lot. Bright fluorescent lights illuminated aisles stocked with an abundance of food, fresh produce arranged in colorful displays, bakery shelves filled with artisanal breads, and refrigerated cases showcasing premium cuts of meat. The scent of freshly ground coffee wafted through the air as shoppers navigated the space with their carts, many engaged with their phones rather than their surroundings. Keanu moved through the store methodically, placing simple items in his basket: oatmeal, bananas, coffee, and a loaf of whole-grain bread. His shopping habits reflected the understated lifestyle he maintained despite his tremendous success in the film industry. As he rounded the corner to the dairy section, he noticed Martin again, now inside the store, struggling to maneuver a particularly unwieldy line of carts. "Need a hand with those?" Keanu asked, setting his basket down. Martin looked up, squinting through thick glasses. "Oh, thank you, young man, but I'm supposed to handle these myself. Company policy." "I won't tell if you won't," Keanu replied with a warm smile, already moving to the other end of the cart line to help guide it. Together, they steered the carts to their designated area near the entrance. Martin's breathing was labored from the exertion, and he leaned against the wall momentarily to rest. "Are you all right?" Keanu asked, genuine concern evident in his voice. "Just catching my breath," Martin assured him with a dismissive wave. "Not as young as I used to be." A sharp voice cut through their conversation. "Martin, those carts aren't going to collect themselves. There's a whole line of them waiting by the far parking spots." The voice belonged to Trevor Richards, the 30-something assistant manager whose pressed shirt and perpetual scowl had become Martin's daily nemesis. Trevor stood with arms crossed, designer watch glinting under the fluorescent lights, impatience radiating from his posture. "Right away, Mr. Richards," Martin replied, straightening up despite the pain evident in his movement. Keanu's expression darkened slightly as he observed the interaction. Maybe he could take a 5-minute break first? Trevor's eyes narrowed as he turned his attention to the bearded stranger. "Store policy requires continuous cart collection during peak hours. If he can't handle the job requirements..." His voice trailed off, the implication clear. "I'm fine, really," Martin insisted, already shuffling toward the exit. Thank you for your help, sir. Keanu watched as the elderly man pushed through the automatic doors, then turned his attention back to the assistant manager. How long has he been working here? That's not really your concern, is it? Trevor replied curtly. Are you finding everything you need today, sir? The formality in his tone was forced, customer service training barely masking his irritation at being questioned. Just wondering why a man his age is pushing carts instead of enjoying retirement, Keanu persisted, his voice calm but firm. Trevor's expression shifted to one of defensive annoyance. Look, we didn't force him to apply. He wanted the job, and frankly, we're doing him a favor by hiring someone his age. Most places wouldn't. A favor, Keanu repeated, the words hanging in the air between them. Exactly, Trevor confirmed, mistaking Keanu's repetition for agreement. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have actual work to do. As Trevor strode away, Keanu abandoned his shopping basket and followed Martin outside. The morning had warmed slightly, but Martin's thin jacket still seemed inadequate as he methodically gathered carts from the furthest reaches of the parking lot. Mind if I join you for a bit? Keanu asked, falling into step beside him. Martin looked up in surprise. You don't have to do that. You must have better things to do with your morning. Nothing better than good company, Keanu replied, already taking hold of a stray cart. For the next 20 minutes, they worked side by side, gathering carts from around the parking lot. Their conversation flowed easily, Martin sharing stories from his days as a professor, while Keanu listened attentively, asking thoughtful questions that revealed his genuine interest. My wife always said I talked too much, Martin chuckled, pausing to catch his breath. She was probably right. Some stories are worth hearing, Keanu replied with a smile. How long were you married? 63 years, Martin said, his voice softening. Cancer took her last spring. Eleanor was everything to me. I'm sorry for your loss, Keanu offered, the simple words carrying the weight of someone who understood grief intimately. Martin nodded in acknowledgement. The medical bills were substantial. Insurance only covered so much. I thought we had enough saved, but he gestured vaguely at his surroundings, hence the glamorous second career. You're doing what you need to do, Keanu affirmed. There's dignity in that. Tell that to my aching back, Martin quipped, though his eyes crinkled with appreciation for the sentiment. As they continued working, Keanu noticed how Martin would occasionally glance longingly at the small cafe attached to the supermarket, where shoppers sat enjoying morning coffee and pastries. Would you join me for coffee after this round? Keanu asked casually. Martin shook his head. Kind of you, but I only get a 15-minute break, and I usually just sit in the break room. Save my money for essentials. My treat, Keanu insisted. Consider it payment for the education. I've learned more about differential equations in 20 minutes than I did in all of high school. Martin laughed, a genuine sound that seemed to briefly erase the fatigue from his face. Well, when you put it that way, I suppose one coffee wouldn't hurt. Coffee and revelations. The cafe was busy with morning customers, the line stretching nearly to the door. Martin fidgeted uncomfortably as they waited, clearly anxious about taking too much time for his break. Keanu noticed the older man's discomfort and steered him toward an empty table. Why don't you sit? I'll get the coffee. How do you take it? Black with 1 sugar, Martin replied. But really, I can... Please, Keanu said gently. Let me do this. As Keanu stood in line, he observed Martin more carefully. The elderly man sat with perfect posture, despite his obvious fatigue, dignity evident in the set of his shoulders. Martin's eyes wandered around the cafe, taking in the relaxed atmosphere with something akin to wistfulness. It struck Keanu that this simple pleasure, sitting in a cafe without worry, had become a luxury for the former professor. While waiting, Keanu caught snippets of conversation from nearby tables. 2 women in fitness attire were animatedly discussing their recent luxury car purchases, while a businessman loudly conducted a phone meeting about property investments, seemingly oblivious to those around him. The casual display of wealth contrasted sharply with Martin's reality. When Keanu returned with their coffees and a selection of pastries, Martin's eyes widened. This is too much, he protested weakly, even as his gaze lingered on a chocolate croissant. Try the croissant, Keanu encouraged, The chocolate ones are my favorite. Martin hesitated only briefly before taking a small, careful bite. His expression softened with pleasure. Eleanor used to make these, he said after a moment. Not quite as fancy, but the chocolate was always perfect. Sunday mornings were croissant days in our house. As they sipped their coffee, their conversation deepened. Martin spoke of Eleanor, her quick wit, her passion for teaching underprivileged children, the garden she had maintained until her illness made it impossible. Keanu listened intently, offering his own observations about love and loss without revealing too many personal details. You know, you remind me of someone, Martin said suddenly, studying Keanu's face. My eyesight isn't what it used to be, but there's something familiar. Before Keanu could respond, Trevor appeared beside their table, his expression tightly controlled, but displeasure evident in the rigid set of his jaw. Break time's over, Martin, he announced curtly. There's a spill in aisle 7 that needs attention. Martin immediately set down his half-finished coffee. Of course, thank you for reminding me. Actually, Keanu interjected smoothly, I believe Martin mentioned he gets 15 minutes. By my watch, it's only been 12. Trevor's gaze shifted to Keanu, irritation flashing across his features before recognition slowly dawned. His eyes widened slightly, uncertainty replacing his authoritative demeanor. Are you? He began, then stopped himself. I mean, take your time, Martin. The spill can wait a few minutes. As Trevor retreated, Martin looked between the departing assistant manager and his coffee companion with growing suspicion. What just happened? Keanu shrugged, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Nothing important. Tell me more about Eleanor's garden. Did she grow vegetables or flowers? They finished their coffee in companionable conversation, Martin gradually relaxing enough to enjoy the remainder of his croissant. When it was finally time to return to work, Keanu walked with him back to the cart area. Thank you for the coffee and conversation, Martin said earnestly. It's been a bright spot in an otherwise ordinary day. The pleasure was mine, Keanu replied. Would it be all right if I checked in on you again sometime? Martin appeared surprised by the request, but nodded with a smile. I'm here most mornings, though heaven knows why you'd want to spend your time with an old man pushing carts. Some of the best people I know push carts, Keanu answered cryptically before saying goodbye. The investigation. Rather than resuming his shopping, Keanu found himself drawn to the customer service desk. The young woman behind the counter did a double take as he approached, her professional greeting faltering slightly. Good morning, he said warmly. I was hoping to speak with the store manager if they're available. Of course, sir, she stammered. I'll page Miss Patel right away. Within minutes, a sharp-dressed woman in her 50s emerged from a door marked Management. Recognition flickered across her features, but unlike Trevor, she maintained her professional composure. I'm Anita Patel, store manager. How can I help you today? She asked, extending her hand. Keanu introduced himself, then gestured toward the entrance where Martin was visible through the glass doors, once again struggling with a line of carts. I'd like to talk about one of your employees, if you have a moment. Miss Patel led him to her office, a small but orderly space with family photos displayed alongside store achievement certificates. Once seated, Keanu came directly to the point. The elderly gentleman collecting carts, Martin, seems to be working under difficult conditions. I'm curious about his situation. Miss Patel's expression softened with genuine concern. Martin Geller. He started about 3 months ago. Normally we wouldn't hire someone his age for such a physically demanding position, but he was persistent. Why would someone his age need to be pushing carts? Keanu asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Miss Patel sighed. From what I understand, his financial situation is difficult. His wife's medical bills depleted their savings before she passed away. He receives Social Security, but it's not enough to cover his expenses. He was initially hired for 4 hours a day, 3 days a week, but he keeps asking for more hours. And your assistant manager, Trevor, is it? How does he treat Martin, typically? A flicker of discomfort crossed Miss Patel's face. Trevor is results-oriented. He's young and ambitious. I've spoken to him about his management style, particularly with our older employees. Their conversation continued for nearly 30 minutes, with Keanu asking detailed questions about Martin's schedule, pay rate, and working conditions. By the end, Miss Patel was regarding him with newfound respect. "You seem genuinely concerned about him," she observed. "I believe we're measured by how we treat those who can do nothing for us in return," Keanu replied simply. As he left the office, Keanu pulled out his phone and made a call. "Hey, it's me," he said when the other party answered. "I need some information on senior support services in West Los Angeles, particularly around financial assistance and housing." "Yes, it's urgent." The plan takes shape. For the next week, Keanu returned to Westridge Supermarket each morning. He would help Martin gather carts for the first hour, insist on a coffee break, and then disappear on mysterious errands before returning to drive Martin home at the end of his shift. Their friendship deepened through these daily interactions, with Martin gradually revealing more about his life, his distinguished academic career, the book on mathematical theory he had published in his 50s, the daughter who lived overseas and called when she could afford the international phone rates. Trevor watched these developments with barely concealed suspicion, especially after several customers began recognizing the famous actor in their midst. Some asked for autographs or photos, which Keanu graciously provided before returning his attention to Martin, who remained oblivious to his new friend's celebrity status. On Friday morning, as they pushed a particularly long line of carts together, Martin finally broached the subject. "So those people yesterday, they wanted your picture because—" Keanu glanced at him with amusement. "You really don't know?" Martin adjusted his glasses, peering more intently at his companion's face. "My vision isn't what it was, and I haven't been to a movie theater in years. Eleanor always said I lived with my head in my equations." "That's probably for the best," Keanu replied with a self-deprecating smile. "I'm an actor. I've been in some films." "Anything I might have seen?" Martin asked curiously. "Maybe. Did Eleanor ever drag you to action movies?" Martin's eyes suddenly widened with recognition. "Wait a minute. Were you in that film about the bus? The one that couldn't slow down or it would explode?" Keanu laughed. "Speed. Yes, that was me a long time ago." "Eleanor loved that movie," Martin exclaimed. "Made me watch it twice. And you're the one from The Matrix too, aren't you? The one who knows Kung Fu?" "That's me," Keanu confirmed, somewhat relieved that Martin's recognition came through fond memories shared with his wife rather than tabloid headlines. Martin shook his head in disbelief. "And here you are, pushing carts with an old man. Don't you have important Hollywood things to do?" "Nothing more important than this," Keanu answered, his sincerity evident. Later that afternoon, instead of saying goodbye at the end of Martin's shift, Keanu made an unusual request. "Would you be willing to come with me to meet someone? There's a person I think you should talk to." Martin hesitated only briefly before agreeing. "As long as it's not another fan wanting pictures with you. I don't think my old heart can take the excitement of being a celebrity's sidekick." Keanu laughed as he led Martin to his car, a practical sedan rather than the luxury vehicle one might expect from a Hollywood star. They drove to a modest office building in a nearby business district where a middle-aged woman greeted them warmly in the lobby. "Martin, this is Sarah Chen. She's a financial advisor who specializes in helping seniors navigate benefits and entitlements." Sarah extended her hand to Martin. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Professor Geller. Keanu has told me about your situation, and I believe we may be able to help." For the next 2 hours, Sarah reviewed Martin's financial documents, which Keanu had helped him gather the previous day. She identified several benefits Martin qualified for but wasn't receiving, including additional Social Security supplements and veterans benefits from his brief service after college. "You should be eligible for housing assistance as well," she explained, showing him the relevant paperwork. "And there's a special program for former educators that could cover some of your medical expenses." Martin appeared overwhelmed by the information. I had no idea. I tried to navigate the system after Eleanor passed, but the websites were confusing, and no one returned my calls." "The system is designed to be difficult," Sarah acknowledged. "But that's why I'm here. We'll work through this together." As they left the office with a folder full of applications and an appointment to return the following week, Martin turned to Keanu with suspicion in his eyes. This is very kind, but I can't afford her services. Sarah works for a nonprofit, Keanu explained. Her services are provided without charge to seniors in need. This was partially true. Sarah did work for a nonprofit, but her consultation with Martin was being covered by an anonymous donation that had mysteriously appeared in the organization's account that morning. The transformation. Over the next 2 weeks, Keanu's visits to the supermarket continued, though they took on a new purpose. He would arrive with documents for Martin to sign, updates from Sarah, or news about applications that had been approved. Martin's financial situation was gradually improving through proper access to benefits, but Keanu noticed the toll that cart collection was taking on the elderly man's health. Despite the warmer clothes Keanu had casually gifted him, "I bought the wrong size, and they can't be returned." Martin's hands had developed a persistent tremor, and his cough had worsened in the increasingly cold weather. On a particularly chilly Tuesday morning, Keanu arrived at the supermarket to find Martin absent from his usual post. Concerned, he approached Trevor, who was directing a new, much younger employee on cart collection procedures. "Where's Martin today?" Keanu asked without preamble. Trevor's expression was a mixture of irritation and reluctant respect. Keanu's regular presence had forced a marginally more professional attitude from the assistant manager. "Called in sick," Trevor replied. "Probably for the best. He was slowing down anyway." "Did anyone check on him?" Keanu pressed. Trevor shrugged. "Not my job. He said he had a cold, should be back tomorrow." Keanu immediately left for the address he had memorized from driving Martin home. The apartment building was in a declining neighborhood, the exterior showing clear signs of neglect. Martin's unit was on the 3rd floor, and the elevator was out of service, a particular hardship for an elderly resident. When Martin answered Keanu's knock, the actor's concern deepened. The former professor was pale, his breathing labored, and the apartment was barely warmer than the outside air. "Just a cold," Martin insisted after Keanu helped him to the couch. "The heat's been unreliable, but the super says he'll look at it next week." A quick exploration of the small apartment revealed the true extent of Martin's circumstances. The refrigerator contained little more than a half-empty carton of milk and some bread. The bathroom cabinet held several prescription bottles, some empty because, as Martin reluctantly admitted, the refills were too expensive this month. The living room was dominated by stacks of medical bills and past-due notices. Despite these dire conditions, there were touches that spoke to the man Martin had been before hardship struck. Bookshelves lined with mathematical texts and literature classics, carefully arranged photographs of Eleanor and their daughter, and a small desk where a half-written letter to his daughter lay next to an antiquated typewriter. Keanu made 2 immediate decisions. First, he called his personal physician, who agreed to make a house call within the hour. Second, he ordered grocery delivery from Westridge, paying extra for priority service. While waiting for both to arrive, he sat with Martin, listening as the elderly man reminisced about teaching days and research breakthroughs. The doctor diagnosed Martin with bronchitis exacerbated by cold and malnutrition, prescribing antibiotics and rest. After he left, Keanu prepared a simple meal from the delivered groceries and ensured Martin took his medication. "You can't keep working like this," Keanu said gently, as Martin ate his first substantial meal in days. "The cart collection is too physically demanding." "I don't have a choice," Martin replied. "The benefits Sarah helped me apply for will help, but they take time to process. And even then, it won't be enough for rent in this city plus medication and food." Keanu nodded thoughtfully. "What if there was another option? What would you do if money wasn't an issue?" Martin chuckled weakly. "A theoretical exercise? All right, I'd finish my second book. I started it before Eleanor got sick, a more accessible approach to complex mathematical concepts for undergraduate students, and I'd find a way to visit my daughter and meet my grandchildren in person instead of just through photos." "Those sound like worthy goals," Keanu said, an idea forming in his mind. The unthinkable. 3 days later, Martin was feeling well enough to return to work, though Keanu had persuaded him to request indoor duties only. He arrived at the supermarket to find Martin organizing shopping baskets near the entrance, looking somewhat better but still frail. "Good morning, Professor," Keanu greeted him. "I have a proposition for you, if you're willing to hear it." Over coffee in what had become their regular cafe corner, Keanu outlined a plan that left Martin speechless. A foundation that Keanu worked with, he was vague about the details, had a program for distinguished academics facing financial hardship. The program provided housing, healthcare, and a stipend in exchange for mentoring and occasional lectures. "There's an apartment available in a building near UCLA," Keanu explained, sliding photographs across the table. "It's part of a community designed for retired educators. The foundation would cover your rent and utilities and provide a monthly stipend for other expenses." Martin stared at the images of a bright, accessible apartment with modern amenities and security features. "This looks expensive." "The foundation has substantial funding," Keanu assured him. "All they ask is that you commit to finishing your book and giving 6 lectures per year to mathematics students." "But why would they choose me? I've been out of academia for years." "Your work on differential equations is still referenced in current textbooks," Keanu pointed out. "I had someone check. Your contribution to the field has lasting value." This was partially true. Keanu had indeed confirmed that Martin's academic work was still respected, but the foundation was a convenient fiction. The apartment was in a building Keanu had quietly invested in years ago, specifically designed for seniors who wished to maintain independence while having access to support services. The stipend would come directly from Keanu, though Martin would never need to know this detail. "It seems too good to be true," Martin said skeptically. "Sometimes good things do happen," Keanu replied. "The catch is that you'd need to give notice here and be ready to move within 2 weeks. The position needs to be filled quickly." Martin's hesitation was visible. "I don't know. It's a big change." "Take time to think about it," Keanu suggested, "but not too much time." Later that afternoon, as Martin was preparing to finish his shift, a commotion near the front of the store caught his attention. A film crew had apparently arrived for an impromptu interview with the store's most famous regular customer. Keanu was politely answering questions about his latest project while Trevor hovered nearby, clearly thrilled by the unexpected publicity for the store. As the interview concluded, the reporter asked a final question. "You've been spotted here almost daily for weeks. What keeps bringing you back to this particular supermarket?" Keanu's response was immediate and sincere. "I met someone here who reminded me of what really matters in life. Sometimes we find wisdom in unexpected places, like from a professor who collects shopping carts." The camera panned to where Martin stood watching, and for a moment, he found himself the center of attention. The reporter approached him eagerly. "Are you the professor Mr. Reeves mentioned? How did you two meet?" Before Martin could respond, Ms. Patel intervened, escorting the film crew toward the exit with professional courtesy but firm determination. "Thank you for visiting Westridge. We respect our employees' privacy and ask that you do the same." After the media departed, Ms. Patel approached Martin with an expression he couldn't quite interpret. "Martin, could I see you in my office?" Assuming he was in trouble for the unwanted attention, Martin followed her with trepidation. To his surprise, Keanu was already waiting in the office, along with a woman Martin didn't recognize. "This is Patricia Reynolds," Miss Patel introduced the elegant older woman. "She's the regional director for our parent company, and she has a proposition for you." Patricia stepped forward with a warm smile. "Professor Geller, I understand you have substantial academic experience in mathematics. Our company has been developing an education initiative for employees seeking to complete their GED or pursue further education. We're looking for an education consultant to help design the program and potentially provide tutoring." Martin blinked in confusion. "I'm not sure I understand." "It's a part-time position," Patricia continued. 3 days a week, flexible hours, in an office environment. The salary is substantially higher than your current position, and it includes full benefits. Martin looked between the 3 faces, watching him expectantly. "This is very sudden. Why me?" Miss Patel cleared her throat. "Actually, Mr. Reeves brought your qualifications to our attention last week. When Miss Reynolds mentioned the initiative during her visit today, it seemed like perfect timing." Keanu maintained a carefully neutral expression. though his eyes revealed his satisfaction with how the situation was unfolding. "So I would be teaching again?" Martin asked, a hint of his old enthusiasm breaking through. "Designing curriculum and teaching," Patricia confirmed. "Many of our employees struggled in traditional educational settings. Your experience could make a significant difference in their lives." By the end of the meeting, Martin had accepted the position, still somewhat dazed by the rapid turn of events. As they left the office, he turned to Keanu with suspicion. "Did you arrange this somehow?" "I may have mentioned your background to the right people," Keanu admitted, "but the position is genuine, and they're lucky to have you." 2 months later, the transformation in Martin's life was remarkable. The new position had indeed been genuine, a corporate initiative that had been in development for months but had lacked the right person to implement it. Martin's academic experience combined with his personal understanding of economic hardship made him uniquely qualified to design a program that addressed the real obstacles facing adult learners. With his improved income and the benefits Sarah had helped him access, Martin was able to move to a safer apartment building with reliable heating and working elevators. His health improved dramatically once he had proper nutrition and regular medical care. Most importantly, the spark had returned to his eyes, the passionate educator emerging once more from beneath the weight of survival concerns. Keanu continued to visit, though less frequently as Martin's circumstances stabilized. Their friendship had evolved into something meaningful for both men, transcending the unusual circumstances of their meeting. On a particularly significant day, Keanu arrived at Martin's new apartment with a special gift, an airline ticket to Australia. "Your daughter is expecting you next month," he explained as Martin stared at the ticket in disbelief. 2 weeks with your grandchildren. All arrangements have been made." "I can't accept this," Martin protested, though his hands clutched the ticket as if it might disappear. "Consider it an advance on your book," Keanu suggested. "I have a friend in publishing who's very interested in your approach to making mathematics accessible to undergraduates." This, too, was not entirely fictional. Keanu had indeed spoken with a publisher who expressed genuine interest after reviewing the sample chapters Martin had completed since starting his new position. "You've done so much already," Martin said, emotion making his voice unsteady. "Why me? There are thousands of seniors in difficult situations. Why did you choose to help me?" Keanu considered the question carefully before answering. "When I first saw you pushing those carts, I recognized something in you, dignity in the face of circumstances that would break many people. You reminded me of someone I loved who faced their own struggles with the same quiet grace." He paused, collecting his thoughts. "We're often told that success means accumulating wealth or fame, but I've learned that real success is measured by the impact we have on individual lives. One genuine connection can be worth more than 1,000 superficial ones." Martin nodded slowly. "Eleanor used to say something similar about teaching. She said changing one student's life path was worth more than 100 perfect test scores." "She sounds like a wise woman," Keanu replied with a smile. "I wish I could have met her." "She would have liked you," Martin assured him, "especially after she got over the shock of meeting the bus movie guy in her living room." They both laughed, the moment of philosophical reflection breaking into genuine warmth. What had begun as a chance encounter in a supermarket parking lot had evolved into something neither man had expected, a friendship that transcended age, status, and circumstance. For Martin, it meant reclaiming his dignity and purpose after years of hardship. For Keanu, it represented another quiet act of kindness in a lifetime collection of such moments, largely unknown to the public that celebrated his on-screen personas. In the end, the most unthinkable act wasn't the financial assistance or the career opportunity, but the simple choice to notice another human being's struggle and pause long enough to help, proving once again that sometimes the most revolutionary act is simply to be kind when there's nothing to gain in return.